Cleveland Film Talk takes you behind the camera lens and introduces filmmakers from the 37th Cleveland International Film Festival. Although today's guests use two different formats, documentary narrative and narrative fiction, both films develop characters that are rich and in conflict with the world around them. Our first guests, Tia Lessin and Carl Deal, created the film Citizen Koch. In your film, the subjects become more than that. They really become characters and people. Is that where this process began, or did you start with the notorious Wisconsin collective bargaining dispute?
Thanks for having us, Simone. We actually began the film with the villains. We set out to make a film initially that looked at how big money was influencing public opinion on a range of issues. And we got word that Charles and David Koch, two of the wealthiest men in America, were holding a retreat in Palm Springs in California for billionaires, for extremely conservative media pundits, and they were going to lay the groundwork for taking back the White House. So, so we thought we'd like to be there and see how that unfolded. We were there, and Tia was actually inside the retreat as it got started, and as a registered guest of the resort, and was tossed out by the private security of Charles and David Koch. And but that's where our story began. We didn't set out to do a film about Wisconsin. We landed in Wisconsin because the Wisconsin story started to break about a month after that.
Right.
And as we got into Wisconsin, we realized that these two stories were just converging.
Right. One almost seems to be the output of what you were starting, that when you got there, some of the plans that they were making were now manifest in Wisconsin. In that process of creating the film, when did you find the three Wisconsin state workers that we follow in the film?
We found them on the ground, and we found them along the way. We met a couple of them during the protests, and we met one of them shortly thereafter, and we followed them for a couple of years as they really became disillusioned with their own party. They were lifelong Republicans. They still are lifelong Republicans, but they saw their governor and the Tea Party extremists that had overtaken their state not only threaten their livelihood, but the principles that they care so much about and that made them want to be Republicans in the first place. And so we see these three people, in conflict, with the new agenda of their party, and we watch what they do with that.
Excellent. I like the way they really, that you allow us to see them and really get to know them as people. This is something that doesn't just happen because you turn the camera on. There's a certain amount of sculpting a narrative, finding the story. Can you talk about how you go between that story writing process, that screenwriting? Carl, you're the screenwriter, and that it overlaps during documentary filmmaking into, you're shooting, you're going between these two things?
Well, you're always constructing a story. I mean, the reality is out there, and your first job is to document it. And you can't document it if you're not there in the moment, rolling tape. And not only focusing the camera on, what's taking place in the action, but really seeing the wide scope of things and reporting as a journalist. Whether or not the camera's on, informing yourself and understanding, what you're seeing and trying to make sense of what you're seeing. So the first step is just being there to document it. The second step is constructing the story, and some of that happens in the field with the questions you ask, certainly, and the characters you cast, and a good deal of that happens actually in the edit room when you sit down with a lot of the material. Our technique with this film, and actually with our last film, is that we shoot, and then we go back and edit, and then we shoot some more, and we edit. So it's sort of a process where one, informs the other, and what we do in the edit room really informs what we want to shoot next, and vice versa.
Excellent. Were there any characters that you lost along the way? That not in that you lost them in the sense of you weren't able to continue filming, but that choices you had to make,
Always.
Certain storylines you had to say,
Always.
But that you loved and had a heart for?
You always just have to kill your babies, is the expression, and course, now that I'm a mother, I don't like that expression so much. But yeah, you know, there's a lot of rich material that you end up having to, you know, say bye-bye to. But you hope that they'll make their way on some level, you know, to DVD extras or short viral pieces. But you have to, you know, stay true to one storyline.
Yeah, I mean, with a documentary with the scope that this has, you know, exploring a very large issue. It can be a minefield, you know, because just to narrow it down, because really you're making a film because you want to make an impact on an audience. You want to, first of all, you want to move them emotionally. You want them to feel something. You want them to maybe, you want them to connect with the characters, with people who they may not have anything in common with, or if they do, who might think a little bit differently than they do, and they'll and move them somewhere. And then also with a film like this, you know, we're outraged by what we've seen happening in this country. You know, with the rise of the extremists on the right and the way that they so creatively deploy money in the political process, but not only in the political process, they sculpt and shape the way we think about issues that are happening day to day. And we don't even realize that's what's happening sometimes. So we feel our own sense of outrage. And in fact, that's how we came to this film, is I wouldn't stop watching Glenn Beck. I was totally drawn into him immediately as soon as he got his show on Fox.
Damaging our relationship.
And yeah, and so we thought, okay, well, let's get out and do something about this. So the other thing we want is we want people to then feel inspired maybe to do something. And so here in Cleveland, we're really excited to be partnering at our screenings at the festival with the League of Women Voters here in Cuyahoga County, and also some larger organizing coalitions that are organizing around these issues are sending a lot of their members, and so we hope that down the line we can really engage with people on a local and regional level.
Yeah. Even though this is a story that's primarily set in Wisconsin, this is a state-by-state strategy and this is not a Republican versus Democrat issue. This is an issue of, you know, the wealthiest Americans trying to set, you know, the public policy agenda, you know, for the rest of us, and not just the agenda, but
that's what I
kitchen table issues. I mean, how we, you know, how much we earn, whether we have the right to join unions, how, you know, whether we can have pensions in our
clean air, clean water.
Yeah,
clean air, clean water, absolutely.
I think that the way that your film is structured, it puts us all on the same side. There's really one side, and I like the way in us getting to know people. It's really about what kind of country do we want to live in, and we're all on the same side if we think in that respect, which I think is what your film brings about, because you guys have such a command of the craft. I feel even as you're talking, you're pairing very passionate political ideals, but as filmmakers, you know, some of the anger, some of the outrage, you know, you're able to actually still tell a really wonderful story and let us get to know, you know, the people, as opposed to just adding more into that Glenn Beck, you know,
yeah, this is not a diatribe. This is not a rant.
Right.
You know, we're filmmakers. You know, we're not political activists. We're filmmakers, but we are engaged with the world, and we are also very angry about what's happening. Not just, you know, on the federal level, but it's a really coordinated state-by-state strategy to take over, you know, our government and to eliminate our government.
Yes. Oh yeah.
My parents were federal government workers. Carl's parents worked for the state of Illinois, so this is also very personal to us. Yeah.
Right. As activist filmmakers, where did you learn how to make movies? How did you become such skilled storytellers?
Well, you just have to do it on some level. But we're very, very lucky because, you know, while I worked as a journalist for many years, Tia worked on a number of very important documentaries that aired on PBS and elsewhere. But then we went to the school of Michael Moore, and Tia was his lead producer on one of his television series, and since then we've been producers on probably 3 of his last 5 films. And you know, that's a really unique experience because you can say anything you want, and everything is geared towards maximum impact. And so that's really where we started to hone our craft. Now we make very different films than Michael makes, but you know, we're very inspired by what he does.
Yeah. Oh, he's a master. He's a master. He reshaped the documentary genre with the personal voice documentaries. You know, he's a master in the field, commanding the camera and directing the field, and he's a master in the edit room. And we've learned so much. We've had such a great privilege. But we also watch a lot of movies. I think watching movies, both documentaries and fiction films, is really educational, and particularly movies that fail. You know, believe it or not, sometimes you can learn the most from films that actually don't succeed. I
think that's an excellent lesson. Yeah, I agree. As we end our short time that we've had with you guys, I would like to ask you guys kind of a fun question.
Oh, good.
Speaking of watching movies, what is in your Netflix queue right now?
We've got about 150 films that we are yet to watch, but
Sesame Street is right at the top.
That's right. We've got a 2-year-old, so
wonderful.
The Landlord is the top of the queue.
Oh, yes,
which is one I've missed. So
I think you'll like it very much.
Yeah. I think there are a few Ken Loach movies that we've missed for the last couple of years, so we look forward to those. Yeah.
Again, 2-year-old kids, so we're way behind on films.
Thank you both so much for bringing Citizen Koch to the Cleveland International Film Festival. I think we, as Cleveland viewers, we appreciate the story that you're telling. We relate to it. We're dealing with it. It ties us as one nation. Thank you for being filmmakers and sitting with us here today and opening us to your process.
Thank you, Simone, and thank you, Ohio, for pioneering, this. The response to these attacks with the referendum, and your victory there was an inspiration to the rest of the country. Thank you for having us.
Thanks so much.
We will be back in a few minutes.
I chose the media arts program at Tri-C because I fell in love with the camera.
I've always wanted to be a filmmaker, and I just never thought it was possible.
One of the things that makes the Media Arts and Studies program different from some other programs is we really marry a study of the art of story and story structure with hands-on, real-world production experience. Just for an example, our students in their first year will get introduced to the equivalent of a 1-ton grip truck worth of media equipment, and at the same time they're breaking down scripts, they're breaking down treatments, and they're learning about how the structure of the story is going to influence every other thing they do in post and all the way through distribution and marketing.
I was surprised by the quality of the equipment that the school provides, because it is professional equipment, stuff that you will see in the industry.
I was definitely surprised and overwhelmed with all this equipment that they have to offer. It's very exciting to be able to have that hands-on opportunity and to learn all the ins and outs of this stuff.
The faculty who teach in the Media Arts and Studies program come from a range of disciplines. So we have working cinematographers, and we have editors, and we have motion graphic artists, and of course they're all educators as well.
They are working in the field that we are all trying to get into, so they are very informative to tell you how things really are, so you don't show up to a job and are completely shocked.
The collaborative opportunities that are available to Media Arts and Studies students are limited only by their own pre-production, really. We have had students collaborate with dance, with theater, with recording arts and technology, and even automotive technology and fire training academy.
I've collaborated with some of the photo students. They can take stills and stuff, and they have cameras too. So there's a lot of opportunity to collaborate and learn more.
Another exterior shot.
The faculty is extremely supportive with our creativity, with our projects. I've yet to be limited on what I can bring to the table as far as story.
I'm able to be that artist. I'm able to be the one in charge of that visual design that I want to get across, and I have a lot of fun doing that.
You don't really have to go to New York or LA to live your dream. I mean, it's right in Cleveland.
We're
we're back with filmmaker Piotr Mularuk to discuss his film Yuma. In your film Yuma, the main character Zyga is in conflict with the small Polish town that he grew up with, and he, falls further into the world of a brothel. It seems very specific that this story takes place in Poland. What are some of those aspects as you started scripting the story where the setting had such a value to you?
This question really opens up so many subjects that I have to backtrack a little bit.
Yes.
And then I'll try to answer a question as time goes by. But first of all, I just would like to comment that he's not really in conflict with the town. He's in conflict with himself, actually. And the whole point about the story is that the town actually follows him. This guy becomes a thief. He becomes a bandit. And this influenced the whole town, and the whole town takes part in crime. And this is why the film is so hated by the media in Poland. Because yes, it's a taboo thing. In Poland, we don't talk about this. Now I have to backtrack. So what happened is that this is a story that takes place at the beginning of the 90s in Poland. Exactly the years are 92, 93. And the story is based on facts. Not only people, but also events and historical events and social world out there. So everything was researched by me for 6 years. Okay, and this all started from an article that I read in the paper, and many years ago, I guess in the year 2000 or 2002. And it was a mind-blowing article depicting the world in the border of Poland, the western of Poland. And it was something where there was no law. It was a world, I read about this and I was astounded. How is this possible that I don't know about this? How is it possible that people don't talk about it? It was a world where it was like the Wild West, where there were only bandits and the whole town participated in all this. And basically, after this article, nobody ever talked about this in Poland. So I decided this will be something incredible to research and to try to make a film about it. And so I have gone there, I've contacted the author of the article, then I contacted there was a professor of sociology who investigated this whole thing, this whole period. And he was my contact, my informer in this place.
And it's the crime element that they don't like to talk about or discuss?
What happened now, what happened is that communism fell in 1989. Right. The Berlin Wall fell at the end of 1989, and this is considered like the official end of communism. So East Germany and West Germany were united after this. And what happened is that there's a river, a small river dividing Poland and Germany. That's the border.
Right.
So this is like a Western also setting, like United States and Mexico, Rio Grande is right there. So it's similar. It is a sort of a Western setting,
Yes.
And the Polish kids, after communism fell, people, not only kids, had their whole life taken away from them. All of a sudden they had no jobs, the factories were closed, the Soviet army base, which was their station, and they did business with the Soviets.
All those things are now leaving.
The Soviets left the country.
Right.
They had no way to make money, no perspectives, no future, nothing to do, and they fell in ruin and extreme poverty within months.
Right. It is, and so it does become like a lawless town.
And where there's poverty and unemployment is 90%,
right.
What do you expect? Crime must appear.
Right.
Now you look across the border, which was 30 yards away, literally, and you see all these stores going up and restaurants opening and people having a good life because West Germans were very rich. They pumped all the money into eastern part of the country and revived the economy this way. It didn't take long for the Polish kids, desperate to have a life, desperate to do something, to simply go across the river and take something for themselves to make a better life.
Well, that's what I like about Zyga, is he imagines himself, he has this love for the film, 3:10 to Yuma, which is a really nice way for you as a filmmaker to make the analogy and make it you know, integral to the story. Your comparisons between the West or that sort of out West post and this Polish town. But I like that it's a part of Zyga's life. It's a part of his awareness that he fancies himself this cowboy.
Exactly, because what Zyga does and what happened in Poland actually during the communist days, believe it or not, we were fed on television American Westerns. There was one TV station, maybe two, and all the time, like even 2-3 times a week, we had all these black and white American Westerns for some reason.
Okay, yeah.
So these kids, including myself, were actually raised with American Westerns.
Right.
And 310 to Yuma would paradoxically was something the guy would see in Poland.
Yeah, yeah.
So his and you're stuck in the smallest town with no hope for life, and then you have, only thing you have going is American Westerns. So you begin to imagine things,
right.
Yes. And
but it does have, what you capture in your narrative film is that there is a hope, that we do reach, you know, as we come to know Zyga, we're constantly rooting for him. We're pulling. There's a certain pull that we have for him.
yeah, because Zyga is he's different guy. I mean, this guy really existed. His fate was a little bit different because in real life he really got killed and died in '98.
Okay, so this is that article that
he got shot by the jeweler as he drove his car through the window to rob a jewelry store.
Wow.
In my film, I have killed his friends instead of him because I was raised in America and I like happy endings.
Okay.
So, or at least not very bad endings. So I didn't kill him, but in real life, he died.
So then how does a Polish audience respond to that? Do they feel that they would have expected for him to die, or do they like that you give him a life at the
audience end? Loves in Poland. The audience loved the film, and because they also love American films.
Okay.
The media in Poland doesn't like me very much because they say you made an American film in Polish.
Interesting.
Which is something bad according to them.
Right.
The audience loves it. They love American films. They like that somebody did a film with a narrative, with a story told, with a character, and you can understand what's going on in the film. But Zyga is a character who, because he's trying to get out of there, and there's no way out, so what he does, he runs to his imagination. So he always thinks of himself as being somebody, either this cowboy or a Robin Hood, or he's the Godfather, or whatever life brings. He's always creating life around him, and of course you can only go as far with your imagination and pretending the world is not what it is, and the world folds on him.
Yes.
So it's a little bit story of Hamlet.
Yes.
It's a little because this is a nice-looking, cheerful, good guy. He's a good guy. He's not your average gangster. He's not what you. And people have said, "Oh, well, he doesn't look like a gangster." He's not supposed to look like a gangster.
Right.
He's an innocent kid who tries to make the best of what he has around him.
Now, as you pull all these elements together, that you want to tell a story that initially you read about in a newspaper, you want the life, the really reality of Poland to be alive, to be timely, and talk about what's happening as communism has removed from the area, and bring this character's imaginative life. There's so many elements you're dealing with. How did you learn as a filmmaker? Did you learn by making this movie? Did you work on other films? Did you study film? How did you, as you approach this film, have that toolbox under your belt?
I mean, the toolbox for this film, precisely. Well, as a filmmaker, yes, I have directed films for television before, and series, dramas for television, and theater plays, and videos and whatnot, and documentaries, but this is my first film for the big screen. So in a way, I had some practice before, but for this film, like I said, I researched it for 6 years, and I went to the border, and I have not befriended maybe, but I have got to know all the people involved. And you see, and then, and I really did my research so well that I could actually tell the story. And when I finally showed the film, the finished film, I went back to the place where it happened, and I showed it to the people who actually took part in this.
Oh, excellent.
It was a scary moment.
Really?
The police were in front of the theater. Wow. They even had the army in front of the theater.
And this was before, this was just in
This was a few months ago.
Wow, but this was just the first screening of it? So they had just heard about it being made?
Yes, this was so I shot it in their town.
Okay.
Where the things really happened, where the guy really lived.
Right.
And I shot it about them, and I shot it in their town, and then I brought the film back to them and showed it in their faces.
And so that's where for the screening they had police there?
Yes. Because they didn't know what's going to happen.
They just were on standby. They were allowing people to come in and see the
Yeah,
film, though.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
So then what did happen is the film
There was a
screened.
funny incident. Now, this is a funny story because the people who did survive, the gangsters, so-called, that were not killed, they were caught, imprisoned, and the moment we were shooting the film, their prison terms ended. And they actually left the prison and came back the day before our crew arrived on the set.
Wow.
So we had an incredible experience of live merging with film. We had the guys who were making the film about watching us do the film. Yes. Some of them were friendly, some of them were not friendly.
Yes.
I got a knock on the room at midnight to my hotel, and my assistant said, these two guys, you have to come down. And I said, it's midnight. I said, you have to come down and see. They insist. I said, oh my God, I got my clothes on. I went downstairs. There's two guys with the golden chains on their necks and just out of prison.
Wow.
I said, we want to talk to you.
Yeah.
So we sat down at the table, said, you're doing this film, Yuma, you know it's about us, yes?
Yeah.
We were there, we did this. I said, oh, okay, great. And they said, what do you know about these things? We want to work for you as consultants.
What a surprise.
And I'm like saying, you guys, I respect that, but you know what? While you were in prison, I was 6 years working on this thing, and I know my stuff. And they said, I said, let me show you. So I opened my laptop. I had shot one scene where the car is driving through the window into the jewelry store. And I showed them to those guys, and they said, oh, respect, man. This is how it happened. This is real.
Fantastic.
And they left me alone.
Fantastic.
And the last thing they said, we got to run. We got to go to Germany. We're making a jewelry heist this evening. And they
Wow.
It's called Life Meets Art, right?
Well, and on your talent, you gaining credibility with them. On you as the director, so
also
that's
when
fantastic.
we screened the film, there was an incident because there was the mayor, the chief of police there, everybody was there, the local notables, and all of a sudden this gangster guy comes up to the mayor and he says, where's my tickets?
Yep.
And he gave him the tickets, so he was sitting in the first row next to the mayor.
Well,
watching the film.
This is quite an experience that you had in making this movie.
And then this guy just came back and shook my hand. He said nothing. He shook my hand and he left. So that was my Oscar, you know.
Yes, yes. This is a wonderful story. And stories just abound. You probably have several more.
I could talk for 3 hours.
We appreciate you sharing that with us, and we appreciate you coming here today and talking to us and bringing this film to the International Cleveland Film Festival.
So we're very happy to be here and to hear this. And let me just tell you one thing at the end. Americans seem to like my film much better than Europeans for some reason.
Well, thank you. Thank you for bringing
it.
Yes. And thank you for joining us today.